Welcome to the Unbranded Leadership Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything about leadership as well as how to grow on our leadership journey. I'm your host, Mike DeStefano, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about courageous leadership, or more or less, the role of courage in leadership. Our guest today is Danny Dwyer, who is a battalion chief with Roswell Fire Department, who spent the last 26 years in the metro Atlanta area working for a few different departments. 15 of those years were with the Atlanta Fire Department. Danny was involved in a call that was pretty controversial. It was a grab that he had made that ended up leading to a suspension and ultimately trickled down into his resignation from Atlanta FD. The call made national news. It had, social media campaigns. He actually had a sticker made after him that said Danny would go. So it was a pretty big event that occurred. So on this episode, Danny talks about that call as well as things that he would change if he could go back, and really the role that we play with utilizing courage to make decisions and to lead our actions as fire officers. Danny's currently a battalion chief with Roswell Fire Department in Georgia and still lives in Georgia with his wife and his daughter, which, let's be honest, is the most important thing. Your family is the most important thing. But we also talk a little bit about how God puts us in really interesting positions, and He does it for a reason. He has a plan for each and single one of us, each and every one of us, and this is just a testament to that. So enjoy. And hopefully you get some stuff out of this because this is a really good one. Hey guys, Mike DeStefano here with the Unbranded Leadership Podcast. I wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Recruit Strength out of Melbourne, Florida. Recruit Strength is a powerlifting and strength training gym located in Melbourne, Florida on Florida's Space Coast. They offer 24-hour access to the gym as well as customized strength and conditioning coaching and powerlifting coaching, both online and in person. So if you're ready to take your training to the next level, visit them at www.recruitstrength.com for more information. All right, Danny Dwyer, how you doing today?
I'm well, my friend. How are you?
Oh, life is good. Life is good. So let's start out by having you tell us about yourself and what's your experience in the fire service?
Okay. I'm my name's Danny. I've been in the fire service, working on 27 years this fall. The whole time has been in the Metro Atlanta area. I got started in the county in which I live now, in 1999, 98. Um, Started up here as a backstep fireman. When I was getting into the business, there was a hiring freeze at a couple departments locally, so I hit everybody in the metro area that would take my application. I had, a little bit of experience in the fire service or upbringing in it. When I was a small kid, growing up in California, my mom dated a San Francisco city fireman for a little while, so I had an idea, but I didn't have this overwhelming desire my entire life to get into the fire service. But I started up here at 19 years old and thought that I had hit the lottery. I mean, I was on a 4 and 5 man engine company. We were running good calls and went to a couple fires. And about 2 years into my career up here, actually my very first driver and a couple other guys left and went to the city of Atlanta. And I wasn't quite sure why they would leave where we were. I didn't know, everything was awesome, and that kind of piqued my interest a little bit, reading fire engineering, firehouse magazines, starting to talk to some guys a little bit. And I applied with the city, I think maybe beginning in I think it was in 2001, early '01, tested that fall. And every year I always got called back. Like I never heard anything throughout the year. They would call you back every year as your psychometric test expired and have me come down and test again. Well, I went through about 2 or 3 years of that, got frustrated, and a friend of mine was like, "Hey, man, why don't you go to DeKalb County, which is right next door to the city? Busy fire department. I think they've got 26 or 27 stations now. Good bit of fire duty." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm cool with that. Like, where is that exactly? I didn't grow up in North Metro Georgia, so I applied there, went to the cab, did a very brief stint there. Really enjoyed my career, but the city finally called in late '04, and that's where I wanted to be. So I made the move over to Atlanta in February of '05. Um, had a great run. I wouldn't trade a cup of coffee for any of the time I spent down there, good and bad. I spent my first about 4.5, 5 years at a double company in Southeast Atlanta, Company 10. Great run over there, made driver, and was attached to one of the special operations satellite companies at 14. Drove over there for a couple years. Um, Went to One's right downtown, which is right next to Mercedes-Benz. It's a great territory. You get a lot of the downtown Atlanta high-rise district, and then you also get a lot of fire back behind the firehouse over in 16's first two territory. So good run over there. Made lieutenant. Went to a double company in Southeast Atlanta. Made it back to one as a lieutenant, and then went to 16's for about 2.5 years, and then finally made captain in 2019. And then I retired early in February, or actually, I guess I technically was off the books in June of 2020. Um, we'll get into the whole reason behind the retirement, but I left the city as a captain and went and rode the back step of a fire engine in Johns Creek, Georgia, a little three-station department at the time. And I laughed when I went there. The entire department didn't run what the last engine I ran was on in Atlanta. Like they were doing I think about 4,000 runs a year between three fire stations. So it was a big change. It was very much needed. I joked when I got there, I was like, it's going to take me 2 years to get caught up on my sleep. And lo and behold, like about 18 months into that, I walked out of there one morning and I was like, whoa, like I feel like this fog lifted. And it took me about a year and a half to get caught up on about 15 years worth of sleep deprivation. So I stayed there for a couple of years, had an opportunity to come to Roswell Fire Department, where I am now in Georgia. And I went there as a captain in 2022. We're actually coming up on our 3-year anniversary here in a few months. And then made Battalion Chief in tomorrow will be 2 years since
Congratulations.
July of 23. Man, we've got a full plate, as you know. You and I have had some Zoom meetings with some of my command staff, and we're going through a lot of similar transitions right now. So we've got a lot of work cut out for us. But as we said right before the podcast started, God puts you in interesting positions and pathways that we didn't know we needed, didn't expect, and everything works out. So it's been a great ride. I really feel in the last 3 years being with Roswell, I've got like a resurgence in my career. I love the fire department again. I'm getting to make some little bitty incremental changes that are having a pretty big impact, and going from a really big organization where that was almost impossible to a
Mhm.
department now. And we're not small. We're 7 firehouses, 42 square miles. Um, you know, we're able to make some changes at my level, which is, I would say on the lower end of things, but some things that are good for the members, and going to really keep our department headed in the right direction. And it's just a whole unique thing that we can talk some more about.
So Roswell is more of an affluent area that's what, a little bit northeast of Atlanta?
We're about due north of downtown. Yeah, we're about I think probably about 20 miles north of downtown, just straight up 400, which is one of the freeways here. And pretty affluent area in North Fulton. So Fulton County is very long and narrow, and we're the start of the top of it. So as you go north out of the city, you run into Sandy Springs, which is a 5-station department that we run with. And then Roswell, and then north of us, there are 3 other city departments that comprise kind of the North Fulton, what we refer to as North Fulton area in region. And so it's pretty neat. It's my first foray into a department like this. We're getting ready to flip the switch and start running automatic aid that's all AVL based. So we're doing a lot of training with the other 5 cities, or with all 5 cities, and there's a consortium with all the 5 buglers and on down to the rank and file guys that are kind of trying to train together and make sure that operationally we can plug and play. If we go into Sandy Springs or Alpharetta, or they come to us, it'll really be seamless. And it's We're a little ways off. It's just one of those growing pains that's going to take a little bit longer to process down to the rank and file guys. It's just going to take a little bit. So
Yep.
once we hit the switch and the 911 centers start talking to each other, I think it's going to really it's going to drive that integration with all the departments a lot faster. So
You
it's
know
pretty
the
cool. It's a really interesting thing.
you know the two things that firemen hate, the way it is and
Mhm.
change.
You were absolutely right. And really with us, the departments, Sandy Springs was a newer department. They've been around since 2006. Roswell has actually been around since 1937, I believe.
Oh wow.
So the department's been around a long time, but where we are right now as an organization is pretty new. And then Alpharetta is another city north of us that's been around for a really long time. And then we've got Milton and the city of Johns Creek, which are all very new departments. They started 2008 and 2010, respectively, I believe. So we're all still growing and learning. But thankfully, we've got all of the fire chiefs in our region right now are playing really well together in the same sandbox, which is pretty unusual. So everything's going good. They're all on board. They're working together. We've got all these different working groups for training and operations and all sorts of stuff. So I think it's going to come together really well. We're going to have some hiccups, and I was actually listening to a podcast this morning with Shannon Stone, who's up in Santa Rosa County, Navarre area, and they do the same thing, like a lot of smaller departments with automatic aid. And I'm really hoping that we can be as seamless as it sounds like they're running up there on the fire ground. So
Like you said, if you have all your chiefs that are on board and everybody's working together and playing nice in the sandbox, things go really well. When you
yeah.
start having those kingdom differences, all of a sudden things go downhill quick.
Yeah, and outside looking in, this is long before I got up here or got into the North Fulton area. It kind of seemed like that was that thing. It was like
Mhm.
everybody had their own little clubhouse and nobody wanted to play. And then, things happen, guys retired, just life happens. But everybody that's up there now is very progressive and not taking anything away from the Chiefs that came before. But the stars aligned and everything seems to be progressing. It's a big task. I think in total we're going to have somewhere just shy of 30 firehouses, I think, in the North Fulton area that will be available as resources. So when it's all said and done, it's going to be a big area. Um, but again, we're going to go from a seven station department that now has the resources of all those other companies around us to bring in for mutual aid, automatic aid, and send it out as needed as well. So I think it's going to be really good when it's all said and done. I'm very much looking forward to it
Yeah, it's definitely great for the citizens that you guys serve too,
for
for
sure.
sure. So you're looking at about just under 30 years experience in the fire service. You've worked your way up from, and I'm sorry, I know it makes you sound old right
It's
off the
nuts.
bat.
I'm only 46, so I'm doing okay.
But 30, almost 30 years in the fire service. You've worked your way up through the ranks and everything from firefighter, driver, lieutenant, captain, and now you're at the BC level. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit throughout your bio there. But you have a unique experience as a captain with Atlanta from an incident that occurred, and like you said, that ended up leading to your early retirement from there. Can you tell us about the incident and how it affected you and basically just everything that happened?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief overview on the fire itself. The fire in and of itself was interesting. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but the after effects of that fire, personally, professionally, I think is a lot more to hit on and more important to me to explain to you. Um, June 28th, actually a couple days ago, June 28th of 19, I was a lieutenant still at Company 16. I was actually covering the truck that night. My captain was out on leave and we responded into Northwest Atlanta, into a territory that we didn't normally go to due to some other circumstances, other calls that were out. But anyway, went to a reported house fire. The initial engine got there, gave a confirmed entrapment. I was in charge of a 103-foot tractor drawn aerial with two drivers. So we did not have a backstep firefighter. Because of our staffing problems or staffing issues at the time, our normal MO was I would tell the front end, we're all having headsets on. I said, y'all get your stuff and meet me on the A side. I'm going to go get us an assignment, which is how we did pretty much everything. They had, pants on. I had, pants, coat. All I had to do was grab a BA, tools, and a helmet, and I was gone. So went up to the A side of the building. The initial engine had already stretched to the Alpha side. We had, fire out two windows, Bravo Charlie corner, bread and butter fire. And the first due truck was working on the burglar doors. I had a face to face with the first engine captain, and he said, "Danny, we got to confirm entrapment. You're coming with me. I need a search." I said, "Hey man, no problem." So uh, at the same time this face to face is happening, the initial BC's arriving on scene. He starts giving out orders. He actually reassigned the first due truck who should have had the search to forcible entry and ground ladders. Gave truck 16 the primary with engine 22, which was the first due attack engine. Um, they pop the door, the engine pushes in, they head straight down the hallway, making their way back to the back left corner of the house. I gave them a couple feeds of slack. I step in the house, and when I tell you they popped the front door, we had great lift. I'm 6'4". Smoke pulls up. It was probably chest high on me, and I distinctly remember thinking that like this that we had like 3.5 feet or better of good air. I was like, man, this if she's in here, this is really good
Oh
for
yeah, it's
us and
tenable
her.
for sure.
Very tenable. So I took a look to my left, looking towards the Bravo side. Took a quick scan with thermal imager, didn't see anything. All of her furniture was intact. Like this thing was burning in the back corner of the house. I mean, it was rocking pretty good, but it was again very tenable fire. Made my way to the left side wall. There was some fire burning around a cased opening. Got over to that opening, took a look down towards the Charlie side of the house, and there she is at my knees. So tried to get out on the radio real quick to let him know. Couldn't get out. Started pulling her. I pulled her about when I stepped it off after during overhaul. It was about 12 to 15 feet line of sight from the front door. I got her about halfway. To this day, I'm pretty sure as a longtime flashover instructor for Draeger and lots and lots and lots of live fire and experience in instructor realm and all that. Pretty sure it was a flashover. If it wasn't, it was a very violent rollover. We had a hostile fire event of some sort. Leaned down, tried to cover her up, and it got very untenable very fast. That's the when you talk about operating inside of a flow path. This was the first time it went completely sideways that I had seen on a legit incident. Um, I remember thinking that if we didn't change where we were, or I was going to end up with her in the burn building. Kept pulling, got her about 6 more feet, and unfortunately, she expired in the front yard. Um, the flow path. That whole incident was initiated by another engine company. It was not intentional, obviously, just some bad tactics. They opened up a door on the Delta side, which kind of changed how
Mm.
everything was moving, and we got caught in the middle of it. So, fast forward a couple days, we did an after action the following shift, which was a Sunday. The battalion chief that was in charge of the incident tried to basically dress me down in front of about 40 guys and stated that I was freelancing and that I was going to get somebody killed, and kind of went on this tirade. And, I waited for him to finish. And this chief and I had run together for a number of years. He was not my direct supervisor, but where he was quartered and where, when I was at 16s, he was our first due incident commander a lot just because where he was. And good relationship, never had any problems before. But I finally just was like, enough's enough. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but this is BS. And told him, with all due respect, Chief, this is not what happened. It's not my definition of freelancing, not the way I came up. He gave me the assignment to perform a search with the engine, which I did. Removed the victim through some sort of fire event, and that's not freelancing, straight up. Because of the fact that I didn't kiss the ring, I think, and just apologize to him, which I could have, and I would still be down in Atlanta and still racking up my pension for a couple more years, but he didn't like the response that I gave. We went back to the firehouse. That was that. I came back to work the following Wednesday and had charges from our internal affairs in my email. Um, so again, that was June of 19. The investigation rocked on the rest of the summer. February of 20, I went and met with our first deputy at the time, and they were proposing a 48-hour suspension for I don't remember the exact charges now, stemming from the alleged uh, alleged freelancing, and I respectfully disagreed with him again. I took a 48-hour suspension, and that night, basically at the time, and I don't know how the organization has changed completely top down since this incident, thankfully. So when I speak of this, these guys aren't there. The fire department in Atlanta is still a great organization. I love it. All my friends still work there. I'm not here to bash them, but at the time, if you um, wanted to fight the suspension or any adverse action, as it was stated, with civil service, you had to ride out the full proposed suspension. Or I could agree not to fight it and take 24 hours, neither of which were going to affect me for promotion. And as a principally, I just could not let that ride, not for what happened. I just was very, very upset, angry, disappointed, you name it. So I chose to fight it. The union released the news story that night. There were a lot of reporters that are very friendly with the Atlanta Fire Department that knew this was kind of coming and were waiting. A couple phone calls were made, and I went back to the firehouse and we're sitting there eating dinner, and then boom, there's my picture on the 6 o'clock news about getting suspended. And that is where the ride began. And for the next several months, I had to turn off all of my social media for a while. I was getting calls from Fox News, from Inside Edition, from the local news media. I did one interview with an AJC reporter, which is a local paper in Atlanta, and it went wild. Um, I was suspended through the second week of February. I came back for, I think, two shifts, and the executive staff at that time, or the fire chief and his number two, started. Lots of things were pointing to the fact that I knew I was gonna carry a target for the next couple of years. I was on a very, very, very busy engine at the time. They really couldn't punish me much more than that. But it was gonna be a rough go. And a friend of mine who is the current fire chief in Johns Creek, where I went. He worked for Atlanta a number of years before he went up there, and he called me. He's like, "Hey man, come up here. We'll take care of you. It's time to relax. You've made your point. You know, come up here." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." And then things just were not looking great for my career in Atlanta. A lot of it is speculative on my end, but just things were lining up that it was going to be a rough go. And I have a 7-year-old now that was 2.5 at the time, and a wife, and I was not going to put them through. A friend of mine at the time, just to give you an example, had been waiting for about 2 years for a civil service hearing date, and
Oh,
then COVID
wow.
hit. COVID hit 3 weeks later, so he waited another year and a half before he was given his job back. I couldn't risk being terminated and it just I was done. I was tired. I was physically tired. I was mentally tired, and I had an out, and I took it. And it is definitely not how I wanted my career in Atlanta to end. I still miss it daily. Um, but on the flip side of that, I feel better now than I did 10 years ago. I'm getting sleep. With our schedule change, and Roswell has been good for that. Just not having the stress of being in Atlanta has been huge. I love that place, but it's a very toxic place to work, or it was when I was there. And just being, as you moved up in rank, it just got harder and harder and harder to function there and healthy. And so, yeah, man, I left in 2020, and I dealt with a lot of self-diagnosis on mine, never officially, but a lot of PTS from that call. I don't know why that call just happened to be the one that caused me to have a lot of sleepless nights, to put it mildly. She was the seventh person in my career that I've had hands-on rescuing, and I don't know why that one was as bad as it was. It was already hard prior to the suspension, prior to the charges, then all that piled onto it. So it's been a journey, man, to put it mildly. Since then, a lot of podcasting and reading and doctor's appointments and a whole host of things to try and clear my mind of a lot of stuff that came up. But it was good. I'm glad I'm much better. I was kind of a looking back, even as short as a couple of years ago, I was kind of a ticking time bomb for a while. I was very short-tempered,
Mm.
very stressed out. Even after I left, I was just this ball of stress, and I'm not anymore. It's a lot. I've come a long way in that space, and but again, that's kind of a whole nother conversation that we can get into or not get into. But yeah, that was the ins and outs of the fire, man. It wasn't anything special. Social media did what it does, and I got a lot of great comments and PR. There were only one or two, and it kind of like I said, I turned social media off for a while. I really didn't see anything negative about it. There were a couple publications that are out there that, these guys that are, whatever department they work for in whatever state, that he was wrong. You should have done this. You should have done that. Well, it's all fine and good. You weren't there. It's not a big deal. But the outpouring of support and, it's been said a lot, but just as a reminder, the brotherhood is far from dead. I think we went through a rough spot. Ironically, through the mid 2000, like that 2010, 2015, there was a lot of things operationally that I didn't agree with that were happening across the country. And towards the end of that decade, um, you know, Eric Wheaton's teaching, Pensacola's kicking off, all these little grassroots fire department conferences, Orlando Fire Conference down by you, just all over the country. They're like, all these little conferences are popping up, and these guys that were all about the job and putting the citizens first and not ourselves. um, I feel like they were all of a sudden starting to take our profession back. And uh, one of my buddies, I don't know if you've had a chance to run across Todd Edwards yet. He teaches a lot all over the Southeast, but he's retired from Atlanta as well. And he's like, you just happen to be the fuse for the powder keg. And it was interesting that blew up at the time that it did. Again, Facebook made it sound a lot cooler than it really was, man. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I was just put in a very unique position that I didn't want to be in. But looking back, I guess I'm glad it all happened the way that it did. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I've met some really neat people. I've had an opportunity to teach about that incident, which led into teaching with Eric and those guys out of Winter Park up at FDIC now. So like my life has changed dramatically since that fire. Um, One very small negative, which was leaving the Atlanta Fire Department, and then a whole lot of positive. So it's really been an interesting journey, to put it mildly.
Yeah, you got a sticker made after you.
Those will not go away. Every time I think they're gone, it pops up somewhere. But
Always, always. So,
the guy
so
that this sidebar real quick on that sticker, uh, a guy named Lenny works up in I forget the town in New Hampshire. Ran across him. He made that original run of stickers and donated, I want to say at the end, and I don't know how many he sold. It was almost $40,000 that
wow.
he donated 100% of the profits to the Metro Atlanta Firefighters Conference, which is a local conference that we host every year here. Some of it went to Gold Shield, which is another public safety nonprofit foundation, and I forget where the rest of it went. But all the money, all the GoFundMe money went to those things. And he called me after it had been about 6 months, and we're again in the thick of COVID. I called my buddy that was big with Massey at the time, and he threw me to voicemail. And I'm like, "Hey man, you need to call me back." And he texted me, and he's like, "What's up?" I'm like, "I'm trying to make a donation to Massey." And he's like, "How much?" And I put $38,000, and my phone immediately rang. But Lenny, he's like, I think it's Notorious LB3 on Instagram. He does a lot of vinyl stuff. hell of a guy. And I still see him every year at FDIC and we talk in between. But I mean, he literally donated just an incredible amount of money, uh, all for charity, which was phenomenal. He's still the largest donor, I think, to date to MAFC, which is awesome. So yeah, crazy. I really wish they'd go away at some point, but I see them every
Nope.
once in a while. I'm like, God, water bottles, helmet stickers, and
There you go. It's another positive from
yeah.
the event, you know. So, magic wand. You could change anything about the event, whether it was the event itself, whether it was the reaction to the after action that occurred with you and the chief, or your decision to leave, anything at all. What would you change anything? And if so, what would it be?
Obviously, if Sally Screen was 94 years old when she was killed, I would do anything for her to be back. I think on that same topic, there was because of who she was and her status in the community, she was a lifelong Adamsville resident. Her church, big part of her life was catty corner to her house. I saw a lot of interviews with her just on the local news in the days following the incident. Somebody in the one of her family members or a neighbor wrote or was quoted in the paper saying she probably would have given me a hug afterwards, and that was hard for me to swallow for a long
Yeah.
time. Like I couldn't have told you that story a year ago without choking up a little bit. So yeah, if I could do anything, bringing her back would absolutely be number one. But as far as the incident itself, um, I'm not going to get into the tactics of it just because it's a longer dive down this other road, right? But tactically, some things will be changed. But I wouldn't change anything about my response. I wouldn't change to him if he would have done things different. And we talk about God putting you in different areas, right? But whatever reason, he was meant to decide what he was meant to decide, and I'm fine with that. I wouldn't change how I did things. Now, if he had said something different, said, "Hey, man, like this is what happened. I really wish you would have done this." Maybe things would have been different. I'd still be there. Yeah, I would love to still have been in Atlanta, but I wasn't meant to be there. But overall, overwhelmingly, the one thing I would change, there are a lot. The Atlanta Fire Department as an organization just got browbeat in the media for a year, close to a year, I think. I mean, anytime that the union or the Atlanta Fire Department posted something on Instagram, Facebook, they were just completely attacked by guys that were running fire department parody pages. They were people personal stuff. How can you say X, Y, and Z when you did this to Danny Dwyer? Like the department took a beating when it wasn't the department's fault. There were two people at the top of this organization that made the decision that they made and dug their heels in when a little pushback was given. So I would take that. I would take that back. I don't think the department itself didn't deserve that. There were a lot of people, um, I think, in recruit school when all that was going on that didn't know me, that doesn't know the neighborhood, that doesn't know the chief, like that they were probably just as excited to be a firefighter for the city of Atlanta as I was, and I'm sure that probably made them some of them second guess. There are also people that work there today. Um, Shoot, some of them might even be lieutenants now that don't know me, that didn't work with me, So I'm kind of glad I'm very glad it's died down significantly. But as a whole, I would change that. I would like that the department itself didn't take the beating that it did. A couple guys deserved it. They deserved the brunt of it, but not the organization it's in and of itself.
So you bring up a really good point. You know, God puts us in different positions and provides different situations and scenarios for a reason. And I think that's incredibly admirable that you didn't want to have the department take that browbeating. That 100%. I agree with that. At the same time, like you said though, everything that happened for a reason. And I'll tell you, from the outsider standpoint of being that person who is watching social media, who's watching, fire engineering and all those different things, and seeing it play out in real time while we just recently had an incident in a couple counties over from us, right around the same time that your incident occurred, where a captain didn't go into a fire and pull someone out. And it
Right.
became a very inspirational thing for us where we talked about it on the other aspect. Hey, don't be like these guys, be
Hmm.
like these guys, So it definitely created some inspiration, some motivation for a lot of hungry firefighters that were out there, including my organization as well. So
I hope so. And even with all the messages, like I tried to respond to all of them initially, and that just I'm sorry in
yeah.
advance, or sorry again for the fact that I didn't get back to everybody, but I did happen to open one message up on Facebook, and I want to say this young man was from Arkansas somewhere, small department, and he was like, "Hey man, thank you because of this incident. We're rewriting our entire search policy and how we do offensive fire operations." And I was
Wow.
like, wow, like that. That was really cool. Again, in the beginning, the outpouring of support from I mean, everybody, all four corners. I mean, it was just completely insane and something I was not prepared for. But in the end, I do think there was a lot more positive than negative that came out of it. Like you said, the incident down in Florida, very, very, very unfortunate. And this was, it just, yeah, man, everything happens for a reason. I don't know why. I told my wife very shortly after all this happened, like within 2 weeks of the incident, I was like, I was never on the truck that night. I wish I would have been, had I been on my engine, I wouldn't have been there, you know? And I really was just like, I'm sick about it. I don't, and she's like, I think you were supposed to be there. And I didn't agree with her at the time. Looking back now, lots has changed. It is crazy to me that that fire was 6 years ago last week, and it's just so much has changed. And in my life, personally, professionally, I mean, it's just been. I laughed 5 years ago. I was like, man, I've had a pretty cool career. I never would have. I could not have scripted this uh, in the beginning, and then it just keeps like every time I turn around, something else just wild. It just things just happen. My dad, since I was a kid, is like everything happens for a reason, and there's no doubt about that. And if you think you got it all figured out, you're going to be reminded real quick that that you're not. You don't.
No
There's
doubt.
another plan that's more important.
No doubt. So one of the let's talk about this whole title of this podcast is the role of courage and leadership. So let's dig into that a little bit. The act of the response that you had on that fire of going in, pulling her out, there was definitely courage there. I think we would both agree it was doing your job. You know what I mean?
Correct.
You had a job, you had a task, you had an assignment, you did it well, and you were able to pull her out on the primary search. The outcome wasn't necessarily what you would wanted it to been, but
Mhm.
the assignment was completed and you did it well. Going to the other portion of it now, when we start talking about like the after action review, when you started getting kind of beat down here for what you had done and having the courage to stand up for yourself and to say, no, I'm not going to agree with what you're saying right now. And like you said, the principle of the matter of not kissing the ring, basically. There's a lot to that a lot of people that are in leadership positions may not have the again, lack of better terms, the courage to be able to do that.
Mhm.
How important do you think it is to have courage as a leader?
Next to humility, probably the second most important thing. There might be some people that have run across me or worked with me in years past that are going to look at me or maybe might even question what I'm telling you. Just but in all reality, I've made it pretty clear. I think I've been teaching. One of my passions is and has been for probably a decade or better is company officer development, more in the operational space than leadership as of until recently. But I've always said, kind of to me, where you earn your stripes as a company officer or as an acting officer in charge, AOIC riding up, it's how you pick yourself up and also how you make very difficult decisions. You're going to have to make unpopular decisions as a company officer, as a captain, as a battalion chief. You're going to have to make decisions that go against probably what you want to do for the greater good of the incident, for the safety of the incident. So how you do that, and I have not gotten all of that right by any stretch. A lot of times now, especially in the last 2 years and with the department I'm in now, I share a lot of stories of my mistakes over the years. I say that because I want all the people that are under my command currently, that are in classes that I'm delivering. I don't have this all figured out. I had a lot of good mentorship coming up. I had a lot of very old school salty captains when I first started in Atlanta that probably played a big part in that, that would go into the chief's office and have a closed door, pretty loud meeting
Yeah, that everyone could hear.
in defense of their guys, and I always am like, God, how does a captain go into a chief's office and talk to him like that? But they were passionate. They took care of their people. And if you are right, if you've done something right and you've given me a defensible position to what you've done, I will walk over broken glass through coals, whatever it takes to cover you. If you do something wrong and or caught on camera or radio or whatever now, you got to give me something. If you give me even an inch, I'm going to cover you. I'm going to look out for you. I'm going to do the best I can to lessen any punishment that you may be looking at. I will go to the top. I feel that strongly about this job. I feel that strongly about leadership. I feel that strongly about it's kind of like being a parent to a bunch of grown men, some of which are older than me now. But the courage end of it, and I didn't look at it as courage until you sent the questionnaire. I think it's just to me beforehand, and I'm going to marinate on that for a little. You gave me some thinking to do, but I really, again, how you pick yourself up, your resiliency as a firefighter, as a man, as a woman, as a company officer, all the way up is huge. And then you have to, if you don't, the comment that I made, and I think this might have been the nail in my coffin at that after action. After I told him that I disagreed with his definition of what happened, I said, Chief, the bottom line is, I said, I have to get up and look at myself in the mirror every morning. And if this fire happens again at 8 o'clock tonight, I'm doing the same thing. Until you give me a fourth firefighter or another person on my rig, you're hamstringing me, and I can't, had I not, I don't know, and I'm glad I don't have to live with the fact that I made a decision otherwise, because that would have been a tough one to sit with for the rest of my life, that I didn't make a move or didn't go in for a primary, or even if again, that was 6 years ago, so 18, 19 years worth of experience and training and um, umpteen years loading pallets during live fire stuff. Like I've been a live fire instructor, like you name it. I took it, that wasn't a decision or a tactic or anything that was made lightly. It was a in the blink of an eye. Um, and it was taken because of I'm very fortunate to have worked in some busy companies and pretty good bit of fire duty. And I made a move based on my experience and intelligence. And do I want a 5 year guy making that? Absolutely not. They're not there yet. Would I have made that same decision on the exact same incident the next day? I don't know. One of my good buddies, he was actually down in your department last week. He's your Hearst guy now, but we were talking on the phone, and he's like, "Damn, Danny," he goes, I hope I would have made the same decision." I'm like, "Me too." I mean, it was just one of those things that happened so quick, and you talk about flow-based decision making and flow-based leadership. Like we grind people during recruit school into just muscle memory. And when this happens, you do this, and you just act and you act and you act. And that's what I want company officers to be. I want them to have all that experience to where at 2 o'clock in the morning, when they were dead asleep 5 minutes before, and now they're on some lady's front stoop getting ready to make a push, that they are absorbing all of that information on the MDT from radio, from other companies. And when you get there, you've got the tools and the experience you need to just go or not. If you make a decision based on the fire conditions or based on what's reported, and the decision's made and you can live with it. And I didn't have a checklist. I've told the story a lot. I didn't have time to sit there and go, man, well, we've got these kind of smoke conditions, and this is where the fire is, and that's not reality. But we talk about this as company officers, as firefighters, as chief officers now, that we want our guys to make decisions, and we want to give them
Hmm.
all the tools for their toolbox and all these things until they make a decision that you may not necessarily agree with. Um, I really hope, and I think because of this incident, if this happens to me as a chief officer in the future, I will handle it differently than it was handled with me. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's just it was a again, man. I can ramble on that for a little bit, but the courage is huge. Like I said, I think humility and being humble is probably the best quality you can have as an officer, as a father, parent, whatever. You're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I don't have a problem if you got to give me a letter of counseling or a write up for something that I've done something wrong, then I'm okay with that. I'd rather you do that than just go, oh well, we're not going to do that because you are who you are. You're Mike or you're Danny, and we've been friends. I'd rather you come to me with a problem than not. And I try and do the same thing now. Like I work, several guys that I work with are close friends of mine, that some for 3 or 4 years and some for 10 years. And, when it comes to work and leadership and being their chief officer or whatever the case may be, when we're at work, we're at work. And, I try and be as fair as possible, but I am passionate. I'm passionate about the fire department. I'm passionate about friendship and family, and those things do come into play. And sometimes I have to take a breath, and that breath may be 24 to 48 hours of a break before I calm down and try and. I don't want to be that knee-jerk reaction guy. I can be because we're human beings, right? We have that passion, and sometimes things just click. I'm very glad I haven't had conversations. When I wanted to have them initially. And for whatever reason, I was forced into a break or took a break and had some time to really think about things before having those tough conversations. But one thing that Chief Troche, my now interim fire chief that you met, is very passionate about is those courageous conversations, and they're hard to have. I don't like having them a lot of times. Sometimes I'm on the right side of the table, sometimes I'm on the other side of the table, and neither one of them are comfortable a lot, but they've got to be had. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I do feel better coming out of them once they're done and over, and we just keep moving, you know.
So you touched on a couple of things there that I really like. One of which is the servant leadership aspect, and you started speaking of that about how you have your guys' backs, and I like to use this line all the time, which is you can never go wrong doing the right thing. If you do what's right, yeah, we have your back no matter what. If you do what's wrong, but you had a good reason, the intent was good, I still have your back. It may be a teaching moment, but I still have your
There you
back.
go.
And one of the things that when I was doing a bunch of research for my doctorate, when I had reached out and asked a bunch of guys what kind of leaders they were looking for and what was the most positive leadership style, I thought full-heartedly servant leadership was going to be the number one. But the number one was actually leading by example. And I think that you really touched on that with that story of talking about how you've been through it. The company officer has this role to play of leading his crew, fighting for his crew, and having those sometimes courageous conversations up the rank structure there,
Yeah.
maybe a little louder than they probably should, but having those.
Different department. It was a different fire service 20 years ago. That's for sure.
Well, I think we still have those now and then anyway.
Yeah.
But going back to that, we have these leading by example aspect of this, and you talked about having even if you were to be sitting on for like you said the wrong side of the table, and you have that person who's talking to you. If you know that you have a courageous leader, if you have that servant leader, that one that leads by example that you trust, that's been there, who's gone through it, how much more easier is that for you to hear what they have to say? And then vice versa.
It is. I had a conversation with my current boss yesterday, and I made a mistake. And he had to have one of those tough conversations with me. And I was like, "Hey, man, like it's cool. Like I made a boo boo. It was a clerical error. No harm came of it. But just the situation that we're in as a department right now, it's just interesting. And so he was like, man, he's like, I've been dreading having this conversation for 5 days. Thank you so much for taking it easy. I'm like, dude, it's no big deal. Like, when I am wrong, I promise you, I will admit it. I make mistakes. I will continue to. I told him yesterday. I said, this is not going to be the last time that I'm in your office. I assure you. It's just inevitable, right? I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to be, but if I'm in the wrong, I'm in the wrong. Now, on the flip side of that, if I'm being counseled for something that I disagree with, it's very hard for me because I'm a very passionate person just in general. And if I feel like I am being slighted or I'm being wrongfully punished, I've also had to have those conversations, and those are very difficult to try and hold back the passion that I've got and have a calm conversation and get out what I'm trying to get out without stuttering or yelling sometimes. Those are tough, man. They're not easy, but when they're done, um, I may not like the conversation that was had, or the other person may not like the conversation that was had. But when they're done, it's like, regardless, the dust is settled, the storm's over. Let's just keep it moving. And they're tough, man. One of my last captains I had in Atlanta, we butted heads for about 6 months, and I learned a lot from this guy. But it finally came to a head one night, and I sat up. He kind of got in my rear end about some stuff, and I went up and sat in the watch office up front for about an hour, and I just stewed, and I was like, I'm done with this. And I was telling my wife about it. I was like, I'll call you back. And she was like, I think I could hear her as I was hanging up, like, do not go. And I was like, I'm out. And I blew open into his office. I'm like, we got to have a talk, man. Like, what am I here? Am I your lieutenant or not? And we had a difficult conversation. I would not recommend doing it the way that I did it then. But we had the conversation, and once we were over, my whole demeanor at that company changed. My relationship with him changed. Um, but we're both two pretty hard-headed people. So it was just kind of like, there was not like a power struggle there, because I was absolutely his lieutenant. I knew that, and he was not going to let me forget that. But there was, we had to air a few things out. So it's tough, man. Like I said, I have my kryptonite as an officer in Atlanta, in Roswell. I don't like. I love my friends, even the people that I'm not super great friends with that work for our organization. I want to always. I want to have. I value good relationships, and so a lot of times I may let things slide. I've gotten a lot better with this, but I may let little things slide because I don't want to make Mike mad, or I
Mhm.
don't want to make Joe mad. And I'm like, it's minor. I'm getting better at that, because I do know that, like, the little things, and that's also something that's so weird, because I have this like struggle in my head. It's like, I let the little things go, but I'm also one of those people that I'm big with attention to detail.
Mhm.
And if you let those little things go, they turn into big things. Normalization of deviance. I'm pretty sure you probably know what that is. And that,
Absolutely.
so I feel like um, we had a fire a couple weeks ago. Uh, Bread and butter, lightning strike, a little bit of fire in the attic. The guys did a bang up job. First due engine got their own water. They stretched, boom, boom, boom. Fire was out in no time flat. All the time, that's what I look at now. It's response times, the turnout time. Everything looked great, right?
Such a chief.
Right, right. Well, I'm doing my after action for it. It's like weaknesses, lessons learned, strengths, et cetera. And I'm like, man, do we have a weakness? And I'm like, after the fire, walking around, and well, the first due engine driver's been on the fire department for, oh geez, I think 35 years.
Wow.
Phenomenal driver, career driver, did a great job. And we utilized the front intake. I mean, I'm talking a kink that is not even a kink. I'm looking around like, okay, we could do better with that. And I was like, do I even say anything? But I'm like, I did, and I had to go up and tell this guy who's got way more time on the job than I do, like, hey man, I'm not getting onto you. Like, this isn't a big deal. But had this 5,000 square foot house, or probably better, got rocking and we need to utilize aerial, that minor kink now that doesn't affect a 200-foot pre-connect might have affected an aerial operation. So like, hey, next time, like pry bar, just, get that kink out. But I couldn't find anything wrong. But that was the only thing. And I'm like, I felt pretty shallow kind of explaining that to him. But I was like, at the end of the day, again, it's like all those things, those little things that go unchecked down the road. I just found out, I guess it's been about 3 years ago now, about the normalization of deviance. And that, I'm telling you, just about every day, I can almost confirm every shift that I'm at work, that comes into my thought process at some point. That is the fire department in a nutshell.
Oh yeah.
Um, complacency is scary. I think everybody gets complacent. I don't care if you're on the busiest company in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, or the slowest company in Roswell, Georgia, wherever. We all get it. And as leaders, as company officers and above, you do have to make what seems like uh, petty, maybe decisions or conversations about little stuff, because those little things, I can say this almost 100% will turn into a bigger problem down the road. Whether it's not checking the saw off because the B shift told you that they didn't run any tree downs yesterday and the saws are good, because then that turns into I look at my gauge on my cylinder, but I don't need to turn it on. They didn't go anywhere with it yesterday. Mike said it was fine at shift change, so I'm not going to do that. And then you have this catastrophic event because that snowball just keeps happening. And so when I saw that there's a diagram that I keep on my desktop, and it's part of a lot of my after actions. I've worked that slide into just about every class I've taught in the last 2 years, because it that needs to be almost a slide in every PowerPoint. If you're talking about operations or fireground operations or the fire department or whatever, like, you can plug that in to any class, and I think it needs to be mentioned. And so anyway, yeah, little things do will become big things. So it seems petty at the time, even to me, to say something, but I feel like I'm going to shortchange somebody one day because I didn't, and then I'm going to regret it, or could potentially regret it down the road.
Well, I think you kind of nailed it with that of, it's that whole, what was that book called? Don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
not going to sweat it. You're not going to like focus on it and not make a big deal about it, but you do have to correct it. I
sure.
like to use the whole thing of a plane. You know, we're on this long journey throughout our entire career. Our department's on a long journey. The fire service in general is on a long journey. And if you have that little bit of off the course in the very beginning, if that pilot doesn't come back and go, hey, correct that back over, you're literally only, 0.0001 of a degree off to the left. Fix it real quick now. All of a
Or you're
sudden, when you're
designated.
coming in, now you're 1,000 miles off target
Right.
because you didn't course correct. So you
That's a
have to
good,
do it,
very
even
good
if it's
analogy.
just a small little, like you said, just a nudge. Like, hey, the kink in the hose, not a big deal. I'm not gonna get on you about it. I'm probably not gonna say anything after this, but just so you're aware, it existed. On to the
Yeah.
next. You know what I mean?
And it's so hard because, but that's again, great analogy. And that kink, somebody is probably gonna listen to this podcast and be like, really, dude? Like, but again, it's just, you've got one of the very first mentors I had in the fire department was former military, hard nose, and he wouldn't teach me anything without me giving him some sweat equity. I polished diamond plate when I was a kid until my fingerprints were gone, because I wanted him to show me what he knew, and he was like, "You got to pay attention to detail." Everything from washing the rig, and that's where I learned it. Like, and then fast forward, 10 or 12 years, I, as an FAO, my zen in the morning was to go outside with a cup of coffee, my checkoff sheet, and a bucket of suds and the water hose. And I checked the engine inside and out, and I wanted to wash it by myself. But guys would always come out like, "Hey man, let me help you, let me help you." I'm like, "Nah, I'm good." And Sure as you know what, four or five guys come out there. Well, then the engine dries and there's swipe marks everywhere because, but their car is in the back parking lot,
Perfect.
waxed, detailed. And I was like, do not even come out here unless you're going to treat this as you treat that vehicle that's out. Because this is mine for the day. And it's a
Yeah.
reflection of me and how it's cleaned and how the hose is packed. And like that to me, especially as a driver, when I pulled up and I looked over at another engine and their pre-connects looked like garbage and their 5 inch was all crooked and like, is it little? Is it we put prime example, my captain at the station I'm quartered at, they dropped all the 5 inch a couple weeks ago, pressure washed it, scrubbed it, reloaded it. You could put a laser level on it. He put like a quick reel together on Instagram, put some music to it, boom. I'd have to ask him how many views it's got now. And people are like, that makes no difference. That's a waste of time. And I'm like, okay, does it make any difference if the hose is dirty, whether how water flows through it? Absolutely not. That is crew building. That is
It's ownership.
it's ownership. It's building your crew. It's a teamwork event. And it's showing pride in our company and pride in your engine. And I do. I'm that guy. I will absolutely judge you. I am going to judge you like an eighth grade girl. If your truck's dirty, if your hose isn't packed right, like and it stinks now because as a chief, like that shouldn't be where I do. But I look around, man. I can't help it. I'm hanging out in the bay and I look over and I'm like, oh my God, like if the tools aren't clean, and the guys do a great job. I'm not saying we have this overwhelming problem, but I was a very prideful driver, and it was one of my favorite positions. I spent a lot of time and probably inhaled way too much Rust-Oleum, but I painted wheels for a long time, and then I was excited that we went to polished aluminum wheels. I was like, man, I don't have to paint wheels anymore.
You gotta
And
polish
I
them
spent a
now.
ton of money on polishing wheels, and so they were back to that. So, but yeah, man, it's like it's having pride in what you do, and it's a especially with the apparatus that is a view into your company, into your person as an FAO, and your company, and you're riding around showing everybody. It's a huge flag. Hey, look at
That's
us.
yeah, it's a billboard. Billboard on
And
wheels.
we've got some the rigs keep. I love the older fire apparatus, but these rigs keep getting prettier and prettier, and yeah, I'm that guy. The citizens absolutely deserve it. They paid, now we're pushing $1 million for an engine. They paid for it. It better stay looking sharp. We just actually promoted our first 15 FAOs, I think 6 months ago,
Saw
and we're
that,
about to
yeah.
promote another 15. The process is open right now, and it's such an important job. And these guys are setting the example. They're setting the bar right now. Um, to what we're going to be as an organization, and how we're going to do things. So yeah, it's a lot, man. But again, it's paying attention to detail, just those little things, little things that you pick up as an FAO, transition over to things that you do as an officer, how you teach your FAOs down the road. Like it all just kind of gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you keep going.
Well, yeah, I think like you had said before, it's kind of that trickle down effect, and it's the fact of the matter.
He said,
Hello.
sorry, Hank, what's like, yeah, I'll be up in all day. Because we're almost ready. Okay, I love you. Taking this little one of the Braves game here in a little while.
Oh man, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be hot. Okay. So,
But like you said there, it's so important to make sure that we kind of course correct from the beginning and it trickles down. If they're not taking care of the apparatus now, what else are they not taking care of? Suddenly they're showing up on calls with their shirt untucked. They don't care about, where they're placing hose lines. They don't care about force plunging. They don't care about the training aspect, and then everything just kind of starts falling apart. So
well, and it's just again, and we're in such a unique position right now. For the people that are listening, we're only about 40% full time right now. We are transitioning from a 100% part time department. I was one of the first 21 captains hired in 2022. We have since hired. We're hovering right around 60, I think 68 personnel, and we'll be. I think we're going to be around 140. So we're not quite at the halfway mark yet. So unfortunately, the bulk of our personnel, all of our single companies right now are full time. Captain, FAO, firefighter. But our double houses, our three double companies, we have funneled all the part-time guys there. So at my station, I've got a captain and a lieutenant, all part-time guys. Well, these part-time guys are coming from DeKalb County, Atlanta, Cobb County, fill in the blank. They already just did, some of them, a very busy 24. Then they come to us, and
Mm,
where 5 years ago, Roswell, you kind of went there, kicked back, and it's not the same fire department anymore. We're expecting a lot more. We put a lot more on our officers, which is trickled down to the firefighters. But so we are allowing a lot more slack than I prefer right now. But I've told all these guys that are our captains and everything now, when I was a captain at the firehouse I was assigned to, if I had three guys out of, we had what, eight guys there, if three guys came in blown out from the night before, my day was done. We weren't going to do pre-plans. We weren't going to do hydrants. I'm not going to get out there and grind. We have to have these guys. We operate
yeah,
with them.
they're not going to be able to operate.
Yeah, if they don't show up, I'm out of a job. So, and I value that. And I also value taking care of your people. I have
Hmm.
responsibilities as captain, as battalion chief, but right now, everything, I shouldn't say everything. A lot of our things are held on how our guys were the night before. I'm not going to tell the captain and lieutenant at the station that I'm at to get out and turn hydrants if those guys were up all night on a house fire, or fill in the blank. So sometimes we just got to pivot, and concessions have to be made. But in a couple of years, there are things that I'm letting. I don't want to sound like a micromanager here, but I expect a lot. I expect the rigs to be tight. I expect the firehouses to look good. They are a reflection on us. They're a reflection on our organization. I love the department I work for. I love who I work for, and I love where I work. So I want those things to shine. I want to be. I want the best looking rigs. We've our small seven station cities split into two battalions. I want the rigs in my battalion to look better than the rigs in the other one. It's our shift,
Well,
and
of
it's
course.
a healthy, a healthy competition. But um, you know, things are going to be different in a couple of years. When we have full-time FAOs, it's really going to help the company officers out a tremendous amount to have steady drivers, to have that senior firefighter position. So yeah, it's going to be a good thing. I'm really excited for that coming up.
So to round out the interview here, you get a brand new guy who is coming up into a leadership role, not necessarily a rank role, but just kind of taking on a leadership role. What is your advice for the up and coming leader as far as courage goes, and utilizing that within their leadership and in their life in general?
As far as courage goes, we as an organization, and it's repeated a lot. You have to be ready for those courageous conversations. We still have them. I have them with the chief of the department. I have them with the deputy chief, the division chief that's over operations. I have them a lot. Um, so be prepared for those. They're not always going to be easy. Stay humble. It says a lot to me. When we were getting out, we did a 6 week orientation as captains. I knew some of the guys in the room, some better than others. I didn't know a few of the guys in the room, but we bonded really well over 6 weeks. And one of our last days, we were getting done, and they're like, "Hey, you guys got anything to share?" And again, I may have put myself out there, but I was like, "Listen, like, don't forget how to run a mob. We're captains." But we're also walking into a very precarious situation at the time. There were a lot of people that didn't want us to go full time, and there was a lot of old school Roswell guys that didn't weren't happy with the way things were going. And it says to me, it says a lot to me when the captain. I try to wash my own car. I sometimes can sneak outside and get it clean before the guys come out.
Wait till they're
They
on the
won't let me
call.
wash dishes, but as a battalion chief. I have worked very hard. I have taken an incredible amount of classes. I've learned, I've read, I've done everything I needed to do to get to the position that I'm in now. I don't think it was given to me. I think I earned it. But that doesn't make me any different than the newest guy walking in the door. I still love the job as much as he does, as much as she does, but you got to stay grounded. We put our pants on one leg at a time. Two bugles, cross bugles, four bugles, I don't care. And I think a lot of times it gets lost. And I think a lot of it, coming from the organization I spent a lot of my time in, that division of the Chiefs and the rest of the guys was intentional. They made it. There was a fire chief that worked for the city for a long time. That I do think he made it sound like the Chiefs were better off than everybody else, and were more. They were here. You guys were over here, and it's that old diagram of like the cavemen pulling the wagon,
Yep.
the leadership
Oh
diagram,
yeah.
right? I cannot disagree with that more. I work for the company officers and the firefighters on my shift. My goal for them is to make their life and their job and the 48 hours they're with us as easy as possible. They don't work for me.
It's that whole
Uh,
inverted pyramid.
Correct. But the best part of this whole thing is the fire chief from our organization feels the exact same way. So does his deputy. So do the divisions. So it's not, I would have had a very difficult time, and I wanted to be a battalion chief in Atlanta. That was my goal. The last couple of years I was there, I would have had a hard time in that organization, in that environment at that time. I can't speak for it now, but with the direction the organization was in, the leadership at the time, I would have had a hard time being in this position. My bosses make it very easy for me to be successful. I really hope that me and my partner, the other battalion chief on my shift, make it easy for our guys to be successful. We don't run a ton of calls. I wish I could tell you that we were going to a bunch of fires and I was getting to be this salty battalion chief commanding all these cool fires. And it, I hate I don't get to do that part of me, but it makes what I do have to do is take care of the guys. If you want to go to class and
Hmm.
you submit a form to go to class, I'm signing it immediately. If you need tuition reimbursement, if you need PTO, like I used to submit 53, or there were the city form was a 1753 was your request for time off downtown. I would submit 53s, my captain would sit on them for 2 or 3 days, 4 days. Well, those are all seniority based. If I needed a Saturday off as a young firefighter, and somebody was going to snag it if that form didn't go up. So
Yeah.
I get now we don't have the forms that get handed off, like everything's coming through ADP or whatever. I try and get like that's important to me. If you need time off to spend with your family, I'm going to give it to you. I will move heaven and earth to get people to backfill your company or whatever I got to do to get you into class, to get you on a PTO, to get you cleaning supplies, whatever it takes. My job is to take care of the people that are assigned for the 48 hours that I have them. And I think that it is easier in a smaller department. It's also harder, so it's different. It's but like I said, I can't. You just stay grounded, man. Stay humble. Realize you don't know everything. And I try and push that a lot, which I hope has an impact on our captains and lieutenants and firefighters and drivers on C shift that, I do make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I tell a lot of stories when I'm teaching class because it's stuff that I've done wrong. Like listen, I'm not telling you this because I read it in a book somewhere. I did this wrong. I had this hose load wrong. I deployed this certain type of bundle wrong. Like I've made pretty fair amount of mistakes in my career. But it's a learning thing. It also reminds them that I was a backstep fireman. I was a driver. I was a lieutenant. I was new at all of those positions. I still consider myself very new as a battalion chief and will for a long time, especially because like we aren't going to a ton of fires. 2 years in a
Right.
certain battalion in Atlanta, you're pretty salty. You've got a good bit of fire duty under your belt. I'm not going to have that for a while, and thankfully, my partner on my shift has, I think, this is his 39th year in the fire service.
Wow.
And he did 28 years with DeKalb County, retired as a battalion chief. Like this man has been to some work. And he's been in those difficult meetings. He's been a part of those courageous conversations. And we always joke, it's like the young bull and the old bull, because I'm full of you know what and vinegar. And we go into these meetings and it's gotten better. But we would sit in these operations meetings and we sit next to each other and they would ask something. And I would just look at Buck and he would look at me and I could tell whether I needed to open my mouth or just stay quiet, you know. And so he's got about 18 months left, I think maybe, and I am going to miss that man. He
Oof.
really has made he was my battalion chief as a captain in Roswell, so I've been with him for about 3 years, and he is just an incredible human being, a wealth of knowledge with the city, a wealth of knowledge in the fire department. Um, I can't say enough about the guy, but he makes our job a lot of fun. And on the flip side of that, he said the same thing. He's like, man, I love having somebody with your energy and your age. It's made him, we both have helped each other out to kind of, fall back in love with the job again, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the whole mentoring, mentee relationship and succession planning, that's a whole nother podcast on its own right there.
Oh man,
But
yeah.
no, I love that though. Like you said, being humble, leading by example, and having those mentor-mentee relationships. I think that's huge, and making sure that you really absorb every bit of information you can from those people who've been there a little bit longer than us, who've seen a little bit more than us, and who know a lot more than us. Because I'm the same boat as you. I've made a lot of mistakes, but that's one of those things. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not making
Not doing it.
decisions, and you're not doing your job. So you
Right.
have to go through it. The person who tells me they didn't make any mistakes, I don't trust them.
No, absolutely not. There was a quote I saw a long time ago that said, what was that? A knight in shining armor has never been battle tested.
That's a good
you
one.
know with our guys, like, I think a lot of people get into, again, I saw this a lot in a department I worked for a long time, that guys get the white helmet, the cross bugles, and all of a sudden they're here and the rest of you are down here. And I wholeheartedly am against that. I'm in the position that I'm in because of tenure and education and a lot of good luck and divine intervention and you name it, but I am no different than the guy riding the back or driving or the company officers. I try and get out every day. One of the guys I work with is a CrossFit nut and tries to kill us every afternoon. But I'm out there working out with the guys. I eat with the guys. I do my best to wash dishes with them. When we go to our training center and are running hose drills or Denver drills or whatever, I am absolutely going to be in gear unless I have a meeting that I absolutely cannot get out of. I will
And
be down.
even then, just go to the meeting smelling bad. It's
Oh,
okay.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Come in there soaking wet. Yeah.
Pride of
But
honor,
it's,
or yeah.
again, like I don't want to be so far removed from I love operations. I love going to fires. I love firing
Hmm.
around the conducting of the symphony, if you will now. But I also like stretching lines and I love forcing doors and I love going to the roof and doing ventilation stuff. Um, so I still want to do that. I can't now, and everybody likes to remind me of that every day. What are you checking your air pack off for? You're not going inside. I'm like, what? Watch and see what happens. Let me
Hey, I've
let me
made
let
grabs
me.
as an assistant chief, so
There you go. So it's like, but I also think because I was that young guy, when the Chiefs out there pulling lines, that says a lot about who that person is to me. And I'm not doing it for any kind of recognition because I don't want to be, I don't want to get rusty. I don't
hmm.
know, dude. My career has gone uh, every which way but loose, and maybe loose in a couple ways. You know, I might be in the back of an engine in 5 years. I have no idea. So I don't ever want to. You never know what might happen.
That
I
doesn't
hope not.
sound bad.
Well, yeah,
You
there's
know,
that
I'm
too.
just saying, my retirement plan might be to retire and go ride backwards on an engine somewhere and be
Hey
completely
man,
happy.
it's not a bad feeling. But again, you know, I still want to get out there and pull lines. I don't want to get rusty with that,
Hmm.
and I do like that's just the core of who we are as a profession, and that's the basics. And to me, if I'm going to sit around and tell people during class to be brilliant in the basics, I don't feel like I'm doing it justice or myself any justice by not being out there with them and pulling lines. And again, they don't like it when I get out there and help them roll hose, and but it makes me feel like a fireman again. I
Yep.
can sit in the command vehicle and do whatever, and then I want to get out. I'm not. I work for a living. I always have. I always will. One of my buddies, he is battalion chief working. He's like, I'm a working boss, bro. That's again, I don't do it for accolades. I don't do it for recognition. I do it because I love it. When you're rolling
Hmm.
hose or you're loading 5 inch sand on the tailboard, everybody stinks. It's raining or it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Some of my best conversations were had doing that, and I don't want to forget that,
That's
so
that leading by example right
I
there.
hope so. And again, I do it because I enjoy it. I don't do it to use it as an example. I see a lot of guys posting on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and their chief officers wherever, and it's like there's this picture of them loading hose and this great line about leading by example or whatever, and I don't do it for that. I do it because I enjoy it and I have fun with the guys. I don't want to. I'm now. I hope I never. Hope I never get to a point where I'm using pictures of myself, my own presentations, going, "Look what I did here." But that's again, that's staying humble and leading by example. Not, I don't have to. I don't have to show anybody what I'm doing. Kind of let your actions speak for your work or
Yeah.
your. Yeah, I think I had
Yeah.
that back.
Yeah, actions just speaking for you. Yeah, and your crew's going to speak for you too.
Right.
That's a big factor right there is the people talking good about you in those rooms you're not in.
I hope so. I hope so. You got to look at yourself in the mirror every morning and doing the right thing is just, it's just granular as a human being, as a parent. My I didn't have I'm 46, my daughter's 7.5, so I had her later in life, and but I think my experiences as an officer has helped me be a better parent, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of parallels. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, and the parallels between being a company officer and a kindergarten teacher are incredibly similar.
I was going to say she probably a better battalion chief than you are.
Yeah, it's incredibly similar. And everybody I know that I've discussed that with that has a wife that's a teacher, we all laugh about how similar our careers are. But yeah, man, it's just, staying, with the courage and the humility, I think is just that you got to stay grounded. That's the bottom line. Don't forget where you came from. Um, yeah, man, that's about it.
So to wrap up the interview here, anybody that you think that I should reach out to have on the podcast next?
I would
Anybody comes to
definitely
mind?
say if you can nail down David Rhodes, he's incredibly busy right now, but
Yeah, he
was
is.
one of my mentors. I never worked. I don't think I ever worked for Rhodey directly downtown. He was in the 3rd Battalion on my shift. We ran a lot of fires together, but he was never my direct supervisor. But a mentor, a very good friend. He has an unbelievable amount of insight into leadership. The guy, when even you see him like a lot of guys see him at FDIC, and that's a different roadie than I know, but the roadie that I know at 2 in the morning doing a hot wash after an incident or speaking in a smaller group setting, when he starts talking, you better listen. And I don't know if he's got some file somewhere where he pulls his stuff, but it is mind blowing the leadership knowledge that he has. And if I uh, will have a fraction of what he's forgotten, I've done pretty well. So if you can
No
nail
doubt.
nail Rhodes down, he would be a great one to have on your podcast for sure. And if I can make that connection offline or whatever, I'll absolutely help you out with it because he'd be a good one.
I appreciate that. All right, Danny, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing all this stuff here and giving us not only your story, but a lot of nuggets of wisdom when it comes to courageous leadership. So thank you, sir.
Well,
I
thank you,
appreciate
man, and I appreciate the relationships made in the last year with you guys through Steve, and I've been listening to your podcast as you've been dropping stuff. So I can't thank you enough. And like I said, man, it's been a wild few years, but I wouldn't be here chatting with you if all this craziness hadn't happened. So All happens for a reason, I guess. So thank you very
That's
much
it.
for the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And that wraps up another episode of the Unbranded Leadership Podcast. As always, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some good information out of this that you can utilize in your own leadership journeys at your own fire departments or whatever industry you might be in. Um, Please, again, let us know if you have anybody in mind who you'd like to have on the podcast. If you have any comments or concerns, anything like that, you can email us. Go to our website and click the contact us button. The website is www.unbrandedleadership.com. And of course, please like, share, and subscribe to our channels. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.